Hey, good morning. Yes, it is. It is Wednesday, May 1st, first day of May. Spring has sprung, right? Started warming up a little bit yesterday, but yesterday morning it was cold. So I thought we'd go over a few points on the lawnmower blades and what I missed. Come on, girls. And when it comes to buying parts and buying, you know, different brand equipment, which ones are made to last the test of time, right? And who has those that last a long time? Well, stay tuned. This should be good. All right, so welcome back. My name is Eric, if you didn't already know it. And we do the weekday show Monday through Friday. We have daily uploads. The weekday show is available in podcast as well as the educational videos and the self personal development. So today I did a video yesterday that some of you have watched, and that was on, basically how to safely sharpen your own lawnmower blades. And one of the things that I missed, and thanks Dave for bringing that up, is hearing protection, because hearing protection ranks right up there. And this is why I'm thankful that I have you guys, with you, Jason, Amos, Ed, now David, Barry, Pete. I mean, the list goes on. But I'm glad that someone said it so that it still gets, if somebody is just thinking about it and they look at and they watch the video, a lot of times they'll look at the comments as well. So in the comments, if it's covered, then it's better than not being covered. So that's why I ask you guys, if you have your area of expertise, don't be afraid to critique me. I'm not thin-skinned. And I actually think that is a positive for helping people learn on the channel. All right. Now, what you guys probably didn't know about me is at one point in time, I was what you would consider to be a professional landscape company. That's correct. And back then, you didn't have as much competition. What do I mean by back then? Well, let me take you to my years of being an expert. I was 9 years old, and I figured out, my grandfather always taught me, that if you want something out of life, you have to give something out of life. And that means you need to work to make money to afford to buy what you want. It's not going to be freely handed to you. So you need to decide now. If you have stuff that you want, whether it be a snowmobile or a car or what have you, in my case, fishing equipment, and then I went into guns. But at the time, my grandfather, he encouraged it. So as part of my allowance for the $5 a week, which was a lot of money back then, I was required to mow the yard with the push mower. We didn't have any riders at that time. All Gramp had was a push mower, and it was the old 3.5 horse, I think. And so I mowed the yard. Then one of my grandmother's church friends would want to know if I'd be willing to mow her yard. So I talked with Gramp. Gramp said, why not? You're in walking distance. So my vehicle of travel was feet. And I would take my push mower and I'd have a 5-gallon gas can that I would strap to the top of it. And I would drag that down to the next yard. And before long, I was doing 6 to 7 yards a week. And at $5 a pop, that was pretty good money for a kid my age, right? And I was smart because most of it I was just bankrolling. And I can remember I had saved up enough. And this is when the cream of the cream at that time, cream of the crop, I think was a rear engine snapper with like a 32-inch cut and or a 38, one or the other. I think it was 38. But I was like the rich and famous and wealthy because now what I did was I had my riding lawnmower and then I had a bungee cord hooked to the back of that, hooked to the push mower, and the gas can sitting on top strapped to that, and I would travel now instead of being on my feet. I was going from yard to yard to yard with the rider. And I would mow as much as I could with the rider, and then I would finish up the trim with the push. We didn't have trimmers. Most people, that if you want to get close to the house, you had like a small type hand scythe that you could whack. Or most people that I knew, most of the lawns that I did, they did their own close to the house, and they would just put in flower beds and then either mulch or something like that so the grass couldn't grow out where I was mowing. But even back then, the equipment was good quality that was being produced. It wasn't cheap steel. It wasn't stamp blades. But you paid a good chunk of money to have it. And I know with my grandfather, every piece of equipment he had, every tool, had its place in the garage. And he had upkeep schedule on the vehicles, what have you. Everything had a certain time to have an oil change, the tine sharpen on the tiller maybe, or he would sharpen the blade on the push mower 2 to 3 times a summer because of how much grass I was mowing. And he would take, and yesterday's video I was showing you all this equipment on, all he had was a pair of prescription glasses, no gloves, no nothing, and he had a grinder, and he would grind and sharpen the blades. Scary, huh? And he would also have me change the oil on that twice a summer because of how many yards I was mowing. And he told me, that preventative is cheaper than having to replace or buy parts for. So he taught me where every grease fitting was on that riding lawnmower that I bought. I bought it used. I never bought one new when I was younger. And I mean, over the years, because I kept mowing yards until I was probably 17, 18. And I started thinking about girls and cars and there was, at that time, young folks were figuring it out, figuring out if you want some of the extra toys and the extra things in life, you're going to have to give a little elbow grease. So when I was getting ready to step out of my lawn care professional business, there were some younger guys coming up that were 10 or 11 that were looking for just that. And I can remember I bought the push mower off my grandfather because I was using it all the time, right? And he actually took and replaced the home push mower with a brand new one. But I continued to use the old one because I liked it. It was light and no self-propelled, no nothing like that. But I can remember the one kid, Dwayne, he wanted to know if he could, work for me, mowing yards so he could make some extra money. And, back then, parents weren't so scared. We didn't have that thing in the back of the mower to protect your feet. And a lot of times I wore sneakers. But I ended up giving him that lawnmower and told him what he needed to do. And I actually had him come help me on a few of my mowing jobs before handing over the reins. I said, you know what, Dwayne, if you want at that time I was up to like 9 or 10 yards. I said, how many yards do you want? And I ended up splitting it up. I think it was 5 and 5 with Dwayne and Bill. And they were young kids. And they wanted to work. But Bill had his own lawnmower, push mower that his dad had. So the two of them took over my lawn care professional business dealings that I had. But we're talking about quality and what lasts the test of time. I hear all these people complain about the Cub Cadets and the Troy Bills and the, big box store, John Deere's, Bad Boys. I mean, the list goes on. And for every unit out there, you're going to have positive and negatives, right? The biggest theme that I see as a repair shop is that people don't value that piece of equipment like I did and my grandfather did. They don't. I have customers that are still running 30-year-old errands or wheel horse tractors, lawnmowers. Still mowing the yard with it. Still pushing snow or snow blowing snow out the front of the driveway. But what's the difference? The difference is it didn't matter what brand they had. It was who took care of it and how did they take care of it, and did they value that piece of equipment enough to take care of it, or is it just something you buy to run until it drops? Because we get numerous customers that come, they're new customers to us, and they bought the unit brand new and it's like 4 or 5 years old and they've never even done a service on it. They just, every spring they start it up and they mow all summer long and then they park it out next to the garage, in the tall grass for the winter and bring it back out in the spring. Those customers are going to be replacing more often than the one that values the lawnmower and either does a fall service on it when they get ready to put it away. They make sure they shut the fuel off so that the carburetor fire cleans itself out so that you don't have that varnish and stuff. A lot of your newer riders and stuff are made to run on the ethanol. I talk about staying with the non-ethanol is better. And certain additives are good. But I could look at 10 customers and find only 1 or 2 that are really taking care of their equipment, that value their equipment. I don't care what anybody says. If you go out and you spend almost $3,000 on a riding lawnmower, to me that's a major investment. And I think that's what Claude paid for his John Deere new 2 years ago. From, I think it was Home Depot or Lowe's, one or the other. And he's meticulous. He washes the deck every time he mows. He keeps track of everything. He does a service on it. He sharpens his own blades. He makes sure it's covered so it's not out in direct sunlight. He's got a place he puts it away when it's not being used. And then I got guys that mow the yard, and the lawnmower sits right out there where they stop mowing. Doesn't get it serviced. Doesn't check the oil. Doesn't check the condition of the blades. One tire keeps going flat, so they go out and they keep pumping that up every time they go to mow the yard. The battery's kind of weak, so they jump start it with a jump box, or, you get where I'm going with this. So, I don't care what unit you buy. It's how well you take care of it is what it comes down to. And that's parts as well. Lately I've been seeing videos where they're trashing the aftermarket and the China-made stuff. I got my pros and cons to all that. But I also have my pros and cons to the OEMs. that don't always fix. And what I find a lot of times is, you get a customer that wants to do their own work. It doesn't matter whether they ordered the carburetor off from eBay from China or they got it through me that's an OEM brand for 68 versus 10. When it wasn't even a carburetor, it was a compression problem of not having enough compression to pull the fuel up into the jug itself. So you can blame parts all you want. But with me, I look less at the part and what the unit is doing. If you've watched any of my videos, we always start with compression first. And why do we do that? Well, because if it doesn't have enough compression in a two-stroke, then it doesn't have that vacuum and pulling power to pull the fuel into the chamber to get ignited by the spark plug. It's got to have compression to suck the fuel. End of story. I don't care where you buy that carburetor. Could be, a Home-Light carburetor OEM or one from China. Putting a new carburetor on it is not going to solve your problems. It's not. And that's where I see a lot of folks bad-mouthing different venues of getting your parts, when it's how you take care of it and how you go about with your repairing. You need to start with compression every time. You can buy a compression tester right at Harbor Freight, and it's not going to set you back a day's wages. I think if you got just a gauge with the one fitting, which covers just about everything in the lawn and garden, you're probably looking at right around under 20. There's 3 different levels there that you can get the other attachments and the snap for $59.95, and then you have the Grand Poobah at like $90. It supposedly has everything. But you need a compression tester to make sure that it's got enough compression to buy a new carburetor. If you don't know what you're looking at, a lot of times taking it to a shop that does know the right way will save you money. It will. And I'm watching a lot of videos, and not a lot because I don't have a lot of time, but the videos I'm watching, whether it's fixing a chainsaw or a generator, or they don't even mention compression. They don't even start with compression. They're looking inside at the jug. They're this. Do a compression test before you do anything. That's going to save you a lot of heartache and headaches. So I'm going to start wrapping this up. But the idea that I'm trying to get across is how well you take care of your equipment is going to be the test of time. You're either going to be that one that values that piece of equipment. Because I don't know about you, but with me, $3,000 is a pretty good investment. So for $3,000, I'm going to want to keep it in decent shape, right? And that means regular maintenance, fixing what you need to fix, and not letting it get to a point of where it costs you big money. It means knowing where the grease fittings are, tire pressure, checking the blades often so that you're getting a good cut. Sharpening them every spring or replacing them if need be. Again, you develop your own maintenance on it. And the big thing that I notice people say, well, I don't have time. My grandfather made time. I made time in between my lawn mowing jobs to drain that push mower twice a season and put fresh oil in it. And I also put an air filter in it once a year. And it lasted me the whole time I mowed. And it was a used mower when I started mowing my lawn care business. And Dwayne, the one I gave it to, it lasted quite a few years after that before it ended up being junk. You could trash the aftermarket companies, China, and even the OEM companies when it comes to buying their parts and stuff, or what's better and what's worse. But if you don't know how to do a diagnostic on an engine to find out what's going on, then you could be just chasing your tail. If you're not starting with compression, my question is why? Because if you don't have any compression, you're not going to have a way to pull the fuel, right, into the jug to ignite. If I don't have compression, there's only one other place I can look, and that's the valves, And knowing how to adjust the valves the correct way, having your jug top dead center and watching the valves, and then using a feeler gauge to get the correct distance in between it, a lot of times will help you with getting your compression up. And if you're going to buy the Harbor Freight, the Predator stuff, I did a video, and I think it's under generators or slush pump or something like that. But when we adjusted the valves there, you couldn't go by, the normal way to adjust them. We had to adjust them by using the compression tester and moving them a little bit here, a little bit there, till we finally got up to over 100 pounds of PSI. You're looking for 90 or above. 120 is probably the better range, but at 90, it's still runnable. At anything below that, you can start it on carb cleaner. Once you get it started, if you're down in the 65, 70 range, and it will start to pick up the gas because the engine is running. But the minute you stop, it's a hard start unless you're using carb cleaner again to get it started. So on that note, if you guys have any other thoughts, leave them in the comments. I appreciate every one of you. And on that note, you guys have a great Wednesday. We'll see you here bright and early tomorrow morning. Thanks so much for watching.